This year, the Lord spoke to me that He wanted me to make myself small. And I don't know if He's ever spoken that to you, but that's a scary thing for God to tell you. In my life, I always felt like I was kind of that girl that was overlooked, even though I wanted to be seen by people. I wanted people to be proud of me. I just didn't feel like my life ever really lended itself to having people pat me on the back very much. And so I just didn't know if I was accepted. I didn't know if people were proud of me. I just wanted to know people were proud of me. And so being small was a scary thing for God to tell me, because the one thing when you want to be noticed by others that you don't want to hear is that you need to make yourself smaller, that you need to be more humble, that you need to not be noticed. I mean, think about our whole entire world. Social media is huge. We put pictures out there and we want people to like it, and constantly we're pulling out our phone or our computers and we want to see how many little hearts say that they like your picture on Instagram, or how many retweets you got. You know, that's how our world is made. We're told to get people's attention in order to feel noticed and accepted. And so sometimes I think we translate that to God. And so when God told me, make yourself small, I just thought, what does that mean? Make myself small, God. Why would you do that to me? That feels cruel. It feels mean. And it just feels like you don't love me. But what He said to me is, small is big. Small is big. When you make yourself small, I can do big things through you. I can do big things around you. I can show people how big I am when you make yourself small. And so He said, I want to show you somebody. And He said, turn to Genesis 6. So I started reading Genesis 6, which is the story about Noah and the flood. And you're thinking to yourself, what in the world is small about Noah and the flood? Everybody knows about Noah and the ark. Even if you're not a Christian, you know about how the arky, Noah, he built him, and arky. I mean, everyone knows that song, right? So, but God showed me something in this story that I think is really special. In Genesis 6:9, it says, this is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, and it was full of violence. But God saw how the people on earth had become, for all the people on the earth had corrupted their ways. So God said to Noah, I'm going to put an end to all the people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I'm surely going to destroy both them and the ark. So make yourself an ark, a cypress wood. And I'm going to skip the next few verses because it's not like we really need to know how to make an ark, because this isn't going to happen again. So I'm going to tell you the rest of what God said to Noah. I'm going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens. Every creature that has breath of life in it, everything on earth will perish. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons, and your wife, and your sons' wives with you. So I was trying to put myself in the place of Noah's wife. And I thought, how weird would it be if my husband came home and said, hey, Sharie, we need to get coffee because God came to me today, and can we just sit down? And maybe we shouldn't go to a public coffee place because this is a crazy story, and so I'm just afraid other people might hear. So let's just have coffee at home. So he sat me down and he said, everyone else on the earth except us, they're corrupt. But we are awesome. And God has chosen us to build an ark because He's going to destroy the world. And so we're going to get on this ark and we're going to escape, but no one else is except us and our family. I would wonder where my husband went to and what kind of crack he was smoking when he came home to tell me that we are the only righteous people on the whole entire earth. I mean, isn't there one more? And why in the world would God tell us to get on the ark? And then let me tell you what happens next. It's really great. he says, not only are you going to build an ark and take your family, but by the way, because I'm destroying the earth, we need to have 2 of every animal and every kind of creature and everything, and you need to collect those as well, and you need to go get on the ark, and you need to put them on the ark. And by the way, it says you need to make sure that you keep them alive. Yeah, so now we have to learn how to be like zookeepers. And I'm thinking to myself, do you know that what animals do to me? Because when I get near animals, I break out in hives, my eyes itch, I sneeze, and sometimes even if I sleep in a house with, like, say, cats or a dog with really furry hair, my throat will close and I can't breathe. So what are we going to do then, Noah? What are we going to do then, husband? Lord, why would you call me to something like this? But you know what I think that's really neat is Scripture doesn't say that Noah's wife specifically said, yes, I will answer this calling. But we know she did. And it was a crazy calling. She had a crazy calling. People thought she was crazy for doing this. But she stood by her husband. I know that because she got on the ark. She stood by her family. I know that because her sons and daughters-in-law all got on the ark. She was a woman who isn't even mentioned in this chapter, and yet she answered this crazy calling that God had for her. And she said, I'm going to get on that ark, and I'm going to follow my husband, and I'm going to do this thing. Do you know that Noah was 500 before he started having his children? 500 years old. Do you know how old he was when he got on the ark? 600. So he had 100 years in there to raise his kids and build an ark. Can you imagine what it would be like to be his family and to go into town and they're like, hey, that's that crazy family that lives out there, and they're building like a wooden spaceship because they just think that the earth is going to be destroyed. They're crazy. I bet they even homeschooled. I mean, I'm a homeschooler, so I can say this. I hear the rumors that homeschool parents get. It's like you churn butter and your kids are socially awkward. Let me tell you what happened. Noah's wife walked down the street and people were like, have you seen that lady and her kids? They're really weird. They're building a wooden spaceship and they're gonna lift up into the air. And by the way, she went the other day to CVS because she realized that she was gonna need some allergy medicine to be on the ark. And so they got like 110 days worth of allergy medicine. I think it's actually probably a floating meth lab that they're building. You know, I mean, what's going on with this family? Because though it flooded and it rained for 40 days and nights, but they lived on the ark for 110 days because the earth had to dry out and they couldn't just get off the ark. If they did, they would have stepped into a muddy mess and sunk. 110 days, that's a crazy calling. You know what feels crazy is when God tells you to make yourself small and you already feel like you're small. I'm a mom. I feel like a lot of the things that I do are unseen. I work really hard. For a lot of years, I didn't have kids that said, thanks, Mom. For a lot of years, I didn't even have my kids that could say Mom. And then when they started saying Mom, they said it so much that I wish that maybe they couldn't say it anymore so that I could have a break. Sometimes your life feels small and you feel like the things that you do are small. I live and I work with a husband who is larger than life. And sometimes people talk about him way more than me. And sometimes people want to take pictures on our dates and I don't get time alone with him. And those things are hard and it makes me feel small. It doesn't help that people don't know how to say my name because it's a weird name to pronounce. And so that makes me feel even smaller. Look, sometimes life feels small and you don't want to live in this crazy calling that God has asked you to do. But God will do big things if you make yourself small. You know, Noah and his family, when they got on the ark, it was 8 people and like 5,000 animals. The earth was devastated. And as much as they wanted to get off, when they opened that door, it looked like a disaster area. How were 8 people going to start a whole entire world again? You know, in the chapters that tell about Noah and the ark, the whole story, there's not one time that it mentions Noah's wife's name. None of the men's wives' names are mentioned. We don't know her name. I wish I did. I wish I could have a hero with a name, but I don't. But you know who knows her name is God. And if she had never gotten on that ark, we would not exist. We wouldn't be here. She was like the second Eve. You know, God could have gotten around it. If Noah decided that he was going to do it on his own, maybe he would have gotten off the ark and God would have like pulled out another rib and made another woman. But she did. She did it. She answered this crazy calling. So I wonder for you, maybe you don't understand what it is that God's calling you to do. Maybe you feel intimidated by the things that God's calling you to. Maybe something doesn't feel worth it. Maybe you feel like you're giving up things that you want so bad. But God will do big things when we make ourselves small. I was a recreation major, and I remember when I went to advising, and I walked into my advisor's office, and when I saw him, I sat down, and he said, well, tell me, Sharie, what is it that you're thinking you want to do with your life? And I said, well, I feel like I'm going to be in ministry. And he said, well, why in the world are you going to a public university then and studying recreation management? And I said, I'm not really sure. I just know that God's called me here. And I just know that I love camps, and I know that I love the Lord. And so somehow I feel like it's going to go together in that way. And he said, well, I'm trying to help you figure out what the subject of your paper needs to be. But obviously, since you don't really know why you're here, maybe you should go to the library, sit in the middle of the library, kneel down on your knees, and ask God to give you an idea for your paper since you feel called, because I obviously can't advise you. I was devastated. I felt so small because when you're in college, you don't know what you're going to do with your life. You just hope that you know and hope that something's going to work out. You know what? I still didn't know when I graduated what I was going to do. And that professor discouraged me so much. I even doubted whether God called me there, even though I really, in my heart and my gut, knew. The only way, or the way that I met my husband, was because I was a recreation major and I knew how to rock climb. And so when I met him, I asked if he needed a rock climbing instructor, and then I ended up working camp, and now I'm part of a ministry, and I'm doing exactly what God's called me to do. I felt like when I was sitting in my professor's office, I felt like I had a crazy calling, and he didn't believe in me. And I didn't really even know how to believe in myself. So I don't know what it is that you're struggling with. You look at your life and you think to yourself, I don't know what God's called me to do. Maybe it's unclear. Maybe it's just seems nuts. Maybe when you tell people, they look at you like you're crazy and you need something to fall back on because ministry is not something that you can sustain yourself with. Maybe you're not even sure yourself, but you know what? If you make yourself small, God will continue to do big things with your life. And I thought this was something that he called me to just this year. But I've realized he's called me to this my whole entire life. When I married my husband, the first 2 years we traveled, all I was a wife. And people would say, what do you do? And I'd say, I travel with my husband. I'm basically his cheerleader. And that didn't feel important. And then I had kids, and I didn't know how to be a mom, and it scared me. And I didn't feel like I was doing anything that was important. But I just stuck with it, and I didn't understand it. And I just said, Lord, where is this crazy calling going? But as he's opened doors, I see the reasons that he's called me to the things that he's called me to. You know, John 3:30 says, he must increase and I must decrease. He must increase and I must decrease. I must decrease. I have to. I have to decrease. And do you know why? Because Jesus didn't ask us to do anything that he didn't do. He was God. He was king of the whole entire universe, and he still is. And he decided that it was worth it, this crazy calling, this insane idea that God had to make himself a human, to die for people who didn't deserve it, who lived in their sin and would never stop living in their sin until somebody came to the rescue. And so Jesus decided it was worth becoming small so that we could have life. And he made the Father's mission big. He's calling us to the same thing that he does. So when he asks you to be small, he's asking you to be like him. Do you want to be like Jesus? Do you want to make yourself small? Because when you make yourself small, God is able to do big things, and people are able to see how big God is. It's not about us. It's about who he is and what he has to offer the world. And that's why we make ourselves small.